So you've got to have some clear objectives and targets and goals that not just you, but the team are striving to achieve. And they were all brought into that ambition and that long-term foresight to where the business is going, because obviously people need that. If you want to keep hold of good people, then they certainly want to know where you're heading as a business, because they want opportunities to grow themselves. So I think that'd be one thing. You need to do some proper planning.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest on this week's episode is Eddie Ray, Staffordshire-based serial entrepreneur operating multiple businesses in the sector, 6 in total. He's the founder of the Progressive Sports brand, which spans across sports coaching, franchising and facility management. In this episode, we hear Eddie's thoughts on how to stand out in a crowded market, using social media marketing to promote yourself and your brand. Eddie used his experience in sport to launch and scale the Progressive Sports brand, and he talks us through his journey from starting out to franchising nationally. He is now also a partner in Liv Well, a suite of online resources for schools designed to improve children's well-being. So sit back and hear a different take on how to launch and scale a brand and the importance of maintaining quality at all times. Brilliant. Eddie, entrepreneur, franchisor, investor. Eddie's a director of 6 different businesses, all of which are in the education sector. His mission is to inspire and encourage children to be physically active. A really positive mission. Yeah, welcome to the show today, Eddie.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Yeah, look, so we were just saying before, obviously big announcements and stuff this week, but we're going to try and keep it positive and look at all the positive things that we're doing, all the work that you're doing across your different brands. And generally how we tend to start the pod is we look at your journey, so like early life. So I mean, Staffordshire, you're born and raised in Staffordshire, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. Rugeley, town of Green.
I've got a connection. I actually got married in Staffordshire, a place called Endon. Is it Endon?
Endon, yeah.
Yeah, really, nice part of the world. So I've got good memories of that.
Good. Well, if you're down this way, come and visit. So I'll open the doors for you.
I will do. So yeah. Tell us a bit about your childhood. How was that growing up?
Very normal, I suppose, if we whatever normal is. But yeah, no, good supportive family network. Both working parents. Dad ran a business, building business. Was a bricklayer by trade. Mom did a lot of office sort of based jobs. I've got a younger sister, and I was just mad and keen about sports, really. And just obviously that was one thing that I really enjoyed from a very young age, and obviously carried that through sort of my whole school life, playing sport, keeping physically fit and physically active. That was very normal, I suppose, a very normal working class upbringing, really.
Yeah. So do you think you were, is it like a sporty family? I know you were really sporty as a child. Was it competitive with your sister and family?
My sister was probably more academic, and I was probably less academic, and it was more about sort of, doing sport and stuff like that. That was definitely my thing. But yeah, no, my dad, 100%, very active, and he's still active today. So, tennis, football, those kind of things. And I still, every now and again, give him a game of tennis and get him running a little bit. So, yeah.
So do you let him win then, or is it?
Nah, do I let him win? No, I got him running around the floor.
We've got down on our research, on our notes, that you were academically, you coasted through school. So I don't know whether we found that out talking to your teachers, or whether you've given us that.
I don't know. Have you been speaking to somebody? But yeah, no, joking apart, I probably wasn't overly academic, but I think coasting probably was referred to a number of times on sort of school reports. But I suppose as you get older, you get wiser, and you start to look back and reflect on things. And I think for anybody listening, I mean, education is incredibly important. I'd never dismiss that, because it is. And obviously I'd tell my children that. But I think we've got to be careful that when we say it's the be all and end all, because it certainly isn't. There's different paths that we can all take, and we all find our route, and hopefully find that route to something that you're really passionate about and really enjoy. And I suppose for me, it's about developing attributes, and we need to develop that in our young people as well, isn't it? Whether it's resilience, problem solving, good communicators, relationships, all those skills that actually stand us instead going into work. And I believe I must have some of those sort of qualities that have assisted me and helped me to, run a business. So,
Having said that, I know you went on to study sports science, or sports coaching.
yeah, sports science. So I studied that at Cannock College.
So do you think that's it? I know we have a lot of students studying sports science and things like that. Do you think that's helped you in your career in terms of coaching practically? I know it's a debate in terms of university degrees, how practical they are, etc. So do you think that helped with you when you're starting out in coaching?
I think because sports science within the course was quite broad, I suppose you don't really delve into too much detail on certain areas, and obviously you're looking at certain topics each half term. So I suppose from the coaching aspect, I looked more outside of college. We did a little bit of coaching and studied various things and different sort of practices, philosophies, etc. But I think that only really accelerated when I started to look outside of college, and I did an FA course back in probably, I think it was 1998. What is now equivalent to the level 2, the FA coaching certificate. And I suppose that's when I first started on that journey, really, with having to do my hours and stuff like that, and really started to develop as a coach and fall in love with it, really, and not just doing coaching courses, but it was also about, as it is with a lot of things in life, is actually finding people that I could actually learn from. And that was with clubs and various things, and started to develop an understanding and a love for actually working with children and then getting out there and coaching kids.
Definitely, and I know that's obviously led to the launch of the business. I just wanted to just take a step back to, obviously, growing up, you had definitely a sporty outlook on things, but in terms of that kind of entrepreneurial, that spark, that bug for starting a business, was that something that you had at an early age, or is that something you noticed as you started coaching and thought, oh, there's an opportunity there? Did you always set out to kind of run a business or run multiple businesses?
I've thought about this before, and I think subconsciously there must have been some things that actually came into my environment, because obviously my dad ran a business, so did my uncle, and ran quite a large company and still does. So I think I must have been influenced in some way, and subconsciously I must have taken some of that in. And I think I did probably from, I recall probably from like 16 onwards, I did think I would go on and run my own business. At that age, I wasn't quite sure what it would be, what sort of sector I'd go and work in. But I think I had those early seeds and those early thoughts that, yes, I would like to take that as a route. So I think some of it was subconsciously and environment stuff. But yeah, no, I did have that early thirst to actually get out there and run a business. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose you've obviously seen what it takes as well to be successful, having watched a couple of entrepreneurs going through it all in the family. So now, obviously, that's led to you running 6 companies. Fantastic achievement. Obviously, one, I'd say, of time management as well, by the sounds of it.
But you want to be my desk, mate, to be
yeah, can't see all the paper. Luckily, we're on Zoom. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of today, what obviously we could be here for hours looking at all the different businesses, but one of really focusing on obviously the standout one, which is progressive sports, and then also the new venture with Liv Well. So if I take you back to the start, I think it was, say, 2005. You've been coaching a bit at college. Then as a freelancer, you were working for another organisation, and kind of. Do you want to expand on that kind of time period for us in terms of how you came about launching?
Yeah. So when I kind of left college, I suppose I was at a crossroads in my, I suppose, early sort of career, and making a decision on what I did at that point. A lot of people that obviously I went to college with started looking at going to university, etc. But I'd already started working on a part-time basis, working for a local organisation that were delivering after-school clubs and various other activities into some local schools. And I decided that was the path that I wanted to go. I wanted to get into work, enjoyed what I was doing. So I just got into doing some work, really, and worked on a freelance basis for that company, and did that for a number of years. So I did that for a number of years from probably 1999 through to around about 2005. So I worked with them for a number of years on various projects. Back in the day, it was, a lot of after school clubs, holiday activities. Really, that was where we fitted into sort of our involvement with schools. And I suppose that's where I learnt my trade, really, and worked with some good people. and started to build up a network of contacts in schools, obviously through the work that I was doing for that organisation.
Can you remember a thought of when you wanted to make the jump? Was it finishing college, or was it a case of you had a plan to always go out on your own?
Yeah, well, I suppose because I was freelance, self-employed anyway, I suppose I saw that as a little bit of I was in control anyway. I wasn't just working for him; I was working for other people and did work for Man United soccer schools and Football de Salo and various other people. So I was doing little bits for loads of people. So I suppose I was a little bit.
Kind of already running your own business in
Yeah,
that sense,
on the
yeah.
smaller sort of scales, I suppose I already had that sort of mindset that I wasn't necessarily employed by somebody and had a line manager, etc. I was sort of controlling things a little bit myself by working for a number of people. But yeah, I suppose it's just a gear change, really. I got to a point where I really wanted to take that next leap, really, and that next leap was to obviously set up my own business, really, and that's I suppose where things started to snowball and we gained some traction and really started to move things forward.
Skipping forward to kind of the stats we've got now, if I'm right, you're working with over 75,000 children a week and 200 plus team members. So obviously a lot of moving parts there to deal with. When was I guess, the first milestone when you thought, "Oh, I've actually got something"? Obviously, yourself, you were good at coaching, but when you business, it's a slightly different angle. So, is there a time when you thought, kind of the penny drops, you thought, "Oh, this could definitely be something big," and was there like that light bulb moment?
I don't think I can identify one particular sort of, as you refer to it, light bulb moment. I think I suppose a lot of it was organic growth, really, from them sort of early days. I mean, we probably early on, I probably thought we've got something that's working because for the first 3 years we doubled the turnover year on year. So I thought, we're obviously doing something right. We've got some good people. Schools obviously like what we're doing. So I think that was a big indicator that we were doing the right things, had the right culture set from the start. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it's just been organic growth. There's been opportunities, and I suppose we've never been shy of actually taking that next step, really. And obviously, then we looked down the franchising route and decided that was the route that we were going to do, so we could have a bigger reach and start to obviously work with more individuals and impact on more children, really. And that's the route we as a business decided to go, rather than spreading more geographically. We decided to go down the franchising route as a route to expand the business.
Yeah, definitely. Just on that, on franchising, it's a topic that comes up on the podcast quite regularly. And in terms of that decision, you said you want that decision so you could grow, I guess, grow quicker than you could organically.
Yeah.
What was the process like for you? Was it heavy upfront investment? Was it kind of, I guess, was it a risk at the time, investing in all of the kind of infrastructure to run a franchise nationally?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a liberating thing to do, actually, because if anybody's read like the E-Myth, which obviously talks about, every business should operate like a franchisor, picking through the systems, the processes, and going through every function in your business and actually systemizing it. And actually, that was quite a liberating thing to do, is actually, pick apart every element and every function that the business does, so you can actually teach someone how to do it, give someone a manual, and off they go, and they replicate the same model in another part of the country. So that was a good experience to do. It's not a quick thing to do. I think we probably engaged with a franchise consultant for probably nearly a year before we actually launched it. There's a lot of sort of legwork to do, a lot of background stuff that needed doing. But yeah, no, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's helped us meet new people, widen our network, open doors. So it's been a good experience. I mean, as with anything, there's good bits and bad bits, but wouldn't change that decision.
And that was back in, was it 2009? You decided to start franchise, or you launched your first one.
Yeah.
Just to give an idea to the listeners, I guess back then it might be different, 10, 11 years ago, but in terms of the cost associated with that, do you mind sharing like kind of the monetary value it took or you could put on it, of setting up a franchise separately to the normal day-to-day business?
It might be more expensive now, but I think going back, just nearly 10 plus years, I think the engagement with the consultant and obviously all the legal costs was around about £25,000 to get the business, so it was in a position that we could actually franchise it. And then with anything, if you've got to kind of roll it out, then you need a certain amount of capital behind you to actually go and, market the business, whether that's attending exhibitions or marketing the business online. whatever we needed to do to obviously start to grow the business, there was a cost associated with that. And that ongoing sort of marketing budget would be anywhere between 20 to 30,000 pound a year that needed to go into actually marketing that side of the business to actually attract people, to come into the network.
I think that's something that you see kind of organizations setting up franchises quite quickly, and maybe they don't put that diligent approach and getting everything, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's before they launch, if that makes sense. And you kind of, it's good that you've kind of shared that so people know, like, it's something you can't jump into lightly, because I guess it's going to sting you later on if you haven't done everything properly.
Yeah, 100%. I think it sometimes becomes fashionable to do what our competitors are doing, doesn't it? Sometimes we look at people and think, oh, they're doing it, we'll do it. But yeah, no, there's a lot of legwork that goes behind it, and also with a lot of things, especially franchising, that you can not competing with, but you're sharing the same sort of exhibition space as McDonald's, and our budget is nowhere near
Yeah.
McDonald's. But yet, for advertising in certain spaces, that's the rate card. Really, you are having to pay. It is expensive to kind of to do some of these things. So I think sometimes people do go into it naively, but I think engage with a consultant, do your own research, read, speak to people that are already a franchisor, get that warts and all sort of account really, and really understand what the good bits, the bad bits are, and then decide whether that's a route that you want to go down. Because there's lots and lots of pluses. You mentioned it, around growth. Yes, you can grow quicker. And obviously, you're not taking all the day-to-day costs on board, obviously, because that's taken by the franchisee. So there's lots of, positives to franchising, and for the right person and the right business, it is a good route to explore.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously definitely turned out well for yourself. I mean, in terms of just going back to when you, maybe before you franchise, I'm not sure how involved you were day to day, but when you were back running the business day to day, so scheduling your staff and looking at all the kind of headaches that managers are facing at the moment. Do you know what was your kind of one of your main recurring challenges that you used to have to deal with, or used to dread on a Sunday night, or whatever it is?
I think that they're probably the same challenges now, to be honest, James. I think they're just sometimes on a bigger scale, aren't they, really? So you're dealing either with more people or, larger sums of money, etc. But I think those challenges from sort of day one are not really too different from what they are now. So whether that's operational challenges around getting the right people in or training them, getting them to do the right things, growing challenges. We all want to, or most people want to obviously grow the business. So there's challenges around marketing and sales, standing out from the crowd, being a little bit different, having something that's a unique proposition or an offer is important, especially in what is now a lot more of a crowded space. So obviously being able to stand out a little bit is obviously important. I think no business wants to be commoditized, and I think there's a certain degree of commoditization within our industry. And then if that is the case, it's always a race to the bottom, isn't it? Sometimes for customers who can do it the cheapest, which is not a great position to be in as a business. But yeah, and managing cash flows. I think to answer that, I'd say same problems, just on a bigger scale.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like you said, they're standing out from the crowd for sure. I mean, one thing I've noticed about yourself, you're really active on kind of social media, or in the right place, if you like. So you're getting noticed in the right places, in my opinion, anyway. So is that something that you've kind of set out as a strategy to do? Obviously, trying to attract franchisees, new customers, etc. But also, you seem to have a finger on the pulse on the conversation across the industry.
Yeah, I think you've got to engage in that, haven't you, really? And I think I suppose there's two ways of marketing your business. You've got to be a bit more lasered and targeted if you're running a campaign around a specific service or to a specific customer base. Then we obviously are campaign driven in that respect. But also, from a marketing perspective, we've got to make a little bit of noise and put some content out there, and that might not necessarily result in some sales straight away. But I think if we're consistent, putting stuff out there and helping them with positioning and authority in terms of the space, I think it's important that you are, as a business, not staying silent. Really, you do need to communicate out, whether that's more directly to certain people, or you just putting information out there and noise out there, and hopefully people obviously pick up on that and start engaging with it.
Yeah, I think you're right, for sure. I mean, the industry, it's so easy it's just full of good news stories every day, right? All the services you deliver in, it's not hard to find a bit of content ever. You could just go down to any of your sessions and it's just there for you, isn't it? So yeah, definitely, I guess a tip for listeners there to get that out and shout about what you're doing out there, communities, etc., in schools. Not to turn it negative again, I just wanted to ask you in terms of challenges. Again, you've kind of we've touched on like the launch and then scaling up really great success and big numbers, big stats. What's been the biggest setback in the journey of growing progressive sports, would you say?
Should I say COVID?
Yeah, let's get into that. Yeah, for sure.
Joking apart, that has obviously provided, I suppose, challenges for us and probably all the listeners that are probably listening on this as well. I think a lot of it probably, which COVID obviously has impacted on, is probably the biggest challenges have always been sort of cash flow, really, not having enough cash to actually, whether that's grow the business, or COVID related, some of the outgoings that are going out and some of your direct costs. But yeah, I think they've been some of the biggest challenges, and a lesson learned there for any business owners. You need to understand your numbers. If you do not understand your business numbers, and that's you that's listening, then you really do need to either have a really good accountant that can support you. But then again, if you've got a really good accountant, I think you need to understand it yourself, because you've got to be able to ask him the right questions. But there's plenty of people out there that you can learn from or you can read stuff on. But yeah, you've got to have a grasp of your business numbers, and you need to know whether you're winning or losing. Because if you don't know that, then it makes it hard for you to actually start scaling something up and growing it. Because if there are weaknesses and flaws in your business, you start scaling it, you'll exaggerate those flaws.
Definitely. I mean, cash is king. And I mean, in terms of dealing with that issue, I don't know if it's just yourself as director across all the businesses, but have you ever had to raise any external investment or bring on investors, or have you looked at it? Is there any every time you've had to do that?
We've had external funding come into the business, but not through sort of investments or giving away equity or anything. We haven't done that. We've just obviously, whether that's the bank or personally put money in. So we've obviously had to inject cash into the business from time to time, as most businesses have to.
Especially if you're growing that quickly as well. That's the thing where you're going to get caught out.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So if you're not generating enough cash or leaving enough cash in the bank each month to actually fund your growth, then you're going to have to get external funding into the business to actually grow it, and that's not a bad thing at all, as long as it's manageable and you can obviously make those repayments. Then all businesses have to look at that if they have aspirations of growing.
Definitely agree. In terms of the industry as a whole, I mean, one question I always try to ask is, what are the things? Obviously, you've been in the industry a long time now. We'll talk about how it's changed later on. But in terms of, I guess, the common myths, myths about the industry, sports coach industry, that kind of push your buttons, that might set you off if you've had a drink or so.
Start banging the table.
Yeah.
I suppose there's a common frustration that maybe some people listening might agree with. I think sometimes when you use the word coach, and that word is used within an education setting, I think sometimes certain people do not believe that person is good enough to stand in front of a group of children and actually teach that children independently. So I think there's still a certain amount of that goes on. Things like, every single coach needs to have a level 2 qualification in every single sport to deliver to a group of children is a bit of nonsense, really, to be honest, because at the end of the day, it's about competency, competency to be able to deliver and actually support that child to make progress. And if you can do that because you have an understanding and the principles of coaching, and you can understand how children sort of physically develop and physical literacy that you've been doing with them. And so I suppose that's a frustration, something we've probably been battling with to a degree from day one of starting the business. I'm sure other people would echo those thoughts and understand that. So I suppose that's a bit of a frustration, really. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. It's up to the organisations that are sending, people into education environments to make sure they're well trained, well supported, they're the right people, and also they have the right skills and qualifications to be able to support young people to develop and also fall in love with being active, and they are the right role models. So I'd say that's probably something that pushes my buttons.
So that grind your gears, yeah. No, I mean, just takes me on to the next one, really. Like, we always look at how things have changed, and I guess hopefully something different. But I know, just from my own observation, the level of quality assurance and the focus that organizations put on that now versus 10, 15 years ago is yeah, it's a massive difference. Is there any other observations you have of kind of the industry as it is now, as opposed to when you got started in it, and where you feel we are at the moment?
There's an awful lot of good stuff going on out there. There's an awful lot of good organisations. I think we're seeing a lot more collaboration between organisations. Really, I suppose a lot of those companies that maybe started up 10, 15 years ago, the business owners are a lot more mature, and I think there's a lot more good sharing of good practice. But yeah, there's an awful lot of good stuff going on out there. Good schemes, good services that are being provided, a lot of innovation. There's a lot of new things that are being done, and it's great to see, really, because at the end of the day, business owners, entrepreneurs, they're the job creators, aren't they? And countries need those people to be successful, to create jobs and push the economy forward. So I applaud anybody that starts a business up and actually does that. But yeah, the industry, there's some good stuff going on out there. There's some good stuff, and you don't have to look too far, to be honest, James, I think, to find out where the good stuff's going.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess it's to all the owners and entrepreneurs out there to kind of get the word out, get their marketing right, and get schools to take notice. As I said, when we touched on COVID and the impact that's had to the industry. I think one kind of silver lining to that is that it's kind of highlighted the fact that how important the work that all the industry are doing in terms of children being cooped up on lockdown and requiring that kind of physical activity and physical literacy development and things like that. I guess that's just one point, but when we're looking at like the issues we've got, like childhood obesity, etc., do you think? I mean, I'd like to know your take on that and how potentially we could fix it. If you've got a manifesto or something, you could talk us through it.
I don't think there's a silver bullet to fix it, is there? Really, I think there's a number of things that obviously need to happen, and whether that's in terms of parenting priorities, finding the right opportunities for children to be active. I suppose good parenting role models and attitudes towards that are really, really important. We also need to have the right safe space and facilities for children to be able to access to be active and low entry into being able to access those things. Because I think, I suppose parents that have a little bit more disposable income can ensure that their children can get those opportunities, where maybe some parents from lower income families, maybe some children do miss out on opportunities. But I think equally it's still down to attitude, isn't it, and priorities. I know from our own perspective, mine and my partners, we do make it a priority. It's a priority for us that our child is active. I want my child to be active and that be part of her childhood. And that's important to us. And it's important they grow up happy and healthy. Schools obviously play a part. And again, I suppose it's priorities in schools. The biggest priority obviously always seems to be, literacy and numeracy. So I suppose sometimes things like PE can take a little bit more of a backseat sort of role within the school. But at the end of the day, I think, ask most parents what would they want their child to grow up to be, and it would be happy and healthy. So if that is the case, I think we have to, place focus on that. And I think physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being can all be taught through, physical activity. And I think developing those sort of attributes and those skills are really important. So I think it's a combination of things that need to happen, isn't it? And it's not, I suppose there has been a decline, hasn't there, James, over the last few years in terms of children's health and more children obese. So obviously some things are and aren't working, but I think there's a lot of good stuff going on in schools. And I think there's education pieces to parents. Maybe some parents do need to be educated more and prioritise better.
Definitely. I mean, like, you just touching on that as a great quote you said there about most parents would want kids to grow up and be happy and healthy. I think that's probably the foundation of what you'd want for your kids, and that kind of leads me on to the new venture that you've just recently started.
Yeah.
Liv Well. So do you want to just expand on it a little bit, give us a bit of an intro, tell us what it's all about?
Yeah, Liv Well was probably born, the idea came out around about 12 months ago when we were working in some local schools, delivering some health and wellbeing lessons. Caroline Siddle, actually one of the co-founders, met our general manager because she was delivering a keynote to some local head teachers around sort of mental health. and she's got a background in that, in education, and also runs her own wellbeing business. So we were already doing a little bit in schools. We met Caroline, had a conversation with Caroline. She liked what we were doing. We decided to change the model and just provide teachers with some online resources and training. And that's basically what Liv Well does. It supports, obviously, pupil health and wellbeing through an extensive range of content, which is lesson plans, teaching resources, all stored online. And we also offer some training. So we do some mental health first aid training. We onboard our customers into how to use the platform. But it's all stored online. The idea is to be placed into the hands of teachers, and teachers obviously deliver the lessons, and we support them on how to do that. And it can impact in lots of areas in terms of personal development, around character, some of the things that we've already mentioned. It can become part of the school's PE long-term plan. It can help with PSHE. It can help with running interventions. There's some really good content, and we're looking forward to the journey with Liv Well, and we just want to get that content out there and get it into teachers and into schools so they can start using it.
Yeah, in terms of the content, and I guess it's all sitting on a website, a portal online. Is it exclusively for teachers or obviously sports coaches and those guys who are facilitating lessons? Can they access as well?
Yeah, so we have taken there's a twofold approach to it, I suppose. We fundamentally just want to get it into schools, and whether that's obviously through us partnering with organisations, so coaching organisations that might already have a contact with school. So we are partnering with them and allowing them to use the material, but also be a reseller of Liv Well, or we are directly, selling it to schools, and schools take complete ownership of it, and then their teaching staff are using it to support them deliver, PSHE or personal development in school. So yeah, there's a two-pronged approach with it, really. We are engaging with other companies that are working within schools, and it gives them, I suppose, we talk about that unique proposition, we talk about differentiation. It gives them that opportunity to be able to deliver health and wellbeing lessons, and the content's been created by somebody who is an expert in their field, and it gives them some really good content that they can go and now impact on the schools and the children that their staff work with.
Oh, brilliant! And what we'll do, we'll obviously link everything in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to get involved, they can contact you on there. One last question on that: is there a parents' angle? Can parents get involved? Because I'm thinking about myself during lockdown and looking for resources and stuff like that. Is it open to parents at the moment, or is it all for professionals right now?
Yeah, it's for professionals at the moment, but we have built an area where there's some information that actually schools can send some information out to parents, but that might be phase 2 or 3. We might open it up further, but at the moment we are just concentrating, obviously, on giving the material to schools, or working with organisations that can then take the material into schools.
Brilliant. It sounds like just what's needed right now, I think. So
yeah,
I'm sure it'll be successful. Coming back to yourself and in terms of your business and habits, things like that. I mean, I know you touched on the E-Myth, the book E-Myth Revisited. I'm a big fan of that as well myself. Do you have have you developed any philosophies or theories over the course of your business life that you use, like you learned while you've been scaling? Is there anything you could share with the listeners?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't want to paint a picture that because a lot of this is learned stuff, isn't it? Really, to be honest. I mean, from where I was day one to where I am now is completely different. But I think what I'll be saying now is you need to have sort of a plan. Not necessarily how we'd think about a formal business plan, but you certainly need to know where you're heading. So you've got to have some clear objectives and targets and goals that not just you, but the team are striving to achieve. And they were all brought into that ambition and that long-term foresight to where the business is going, because obviously people need that. If you want to keep hold of good people, then they certainly want to know where you're heading as a business, because they want opportunities to grow themselves. So I think that'd be one thing. You need to do some proper planning.
I'm going to say, I know you mentioned it where you were at the start. I'm sure you. Am I right in thinking you didn't have a fully fledged business plan when you thought I'm going to start? You didn't sit down 20-page document or anything, no?
Yeah, certainly a bit more organic and a bit more. I think at that stage it's more vocational. It's like I enjoyed what I do, and I was on the tools. I was delivering it, wasn't I? So I suppose that was where a lot of my efforts went into. But I suppose as you start to grow something and you start to take on people, then you have to understand the other elements of running a business, really. And I think other things I'd say is, don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. I've certainly failed lots of times, but it's part of a learning process, isn't it? You have to go through that to actually develop and grow as an individual, but also for the business too, and learn from their mistakes. Any business needs good people involved as well. So if you kind of peel back any business, there'll be people inside that business that the business owner can really trust and can support in your growth. So I think hire good people, keep hold of them. Equally, if they're not the right person, get them out of your business as quick as possible. But yeah, I suppose there are some things that I have taken away from running a business.
Yeah, brilliant. Love that. So for you personally, do you have a daily routine to keep you at your best? To kind of any habits that you do, anything you kind of focus on every day?
I suppose personally, I like to, if I can, get to the gym in the morning. I'd like to, start, I suppose, on the right foot, and I like to do a bit of exercise in the mornings if possible. I'd go to the gym probably 6:30, 7. Like to get in the office by 8:15, sort of 8:30. Jump into it, plan my day. So the first thing I will plan my day, and decide what are the big things, what are the things that are going to help the business move forward today. And obviously we've got clear objectives of what we want to achieve in the next sort of quarter and year. And I need to be working on those things. They're the things that are obviously going to make the biggest difference to the business. And I'm a bit of a prolific list maker as well, so I make lots of lists. If you could see my desk, it'd be covered. It's actually not looking too bad, but it's normally covered in Post-it notes, and there's bits of stuff everywhere. That works for me because obviously I need to write things down, but then I do make lists and I do prioritize my workload. And I'm pretty good at, I was going to swear then, but I don't suppose I can swear.
Yeah, you're allowed to swear.
I think I'm pretty good at getting shit done as well. I think, and I think holding myself to account and actually getting stuff done. Actions speak louder than words, don't they, James? I think it's not just about talking, it's about doing, isn't it? And I think I'm a pretty good doer. I do get stuff done.
Yeah, and I think that's it's key. Like you've got to back up what you're saying you're going to do. So it's probably the worst thing if you don't follow through with it. No, I love that. Share a lot of those habits myself. Because normally just wrap up. I've got one last question. I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but if you had a time machine, you can go back to when you were starting the business, and you could just give yourself one little gem of advice, speaking to yourself back 15, 20 years ago now, what would it be that you'd tell yourself?
I think surround yourself with people that are where you want to be. So if you've got aspirations, to $1 million business, £10 million business, find somebody that's already doing it. Find someone that can support you and help you. And I think we all do need that. I think when you're a bit younger, you can be a bit more naive and a bit more maybe, and then naive, it's not a bad thing sometimes because you go into things, maybe not overthinking things too much. But I think, go and find that support, because there are people out there that will help you. There's networking groups, there's things you can do personally to develop yourself and do those things, because it will assist you and support you. And then just enjoy the process. Just enjoy it. You will quickly find out whether running a business is for you or not. And if it is, enjoy the journey, because it is a good journey. It has its tough times, but would I change it? No. I really enjoy what I do. I get up every morning with a spring in my steps. I really enjoy what we're doing, and I really enjoy our purpose as well. Our purpose is to get out there and support children to be more physically active and improve the health and well-being of those people that we work with. And that passion and that want to do that is just as strong now, if not stronger, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's exactly why we launched the podcast, trying to bring that network or those inspirational figures like yourself to the listeners who are either starting that journey out or in the middle of it now. Hopefully, reduce the mistakes, and you've made plenty of mistakes, so hopefully someone else doesn't have to. That's the way we look at it. But yeah, thanks so much for your time, Eddie, today. I really appreciate you giving that up, and early insightful and compelling responses there. So in terms of our listeners, if they want to get in touch with you, how would they go about that?
Yeah, just probably LinkedIn the best place. So obviously just stick Eddie Rain into there, and you'll find me, and happy to connect and answer any questions. And if there's any collaboration or anything we can do, I'm happy to do that.
Definitely. I can definitely vouch for your content on LinkedIn. There's always something valuable on there. So,
all right, lovely, James. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_Ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.